I've seen this head of compliance telling me, I want to see AI. And okay, but what do you want? Just show me AI. What he meant was a ChatGPT, so a large language model. He meant show me something that is magic.
What would you suggest to a compliance or AML director? What should they think through before starting an AI project?
If your data are this brown emoticon, it doesn't matter what you're going to use, you are going to end up with the wrong project. So everything starts with the data.
I think this is our task to identify all the use cases that is possible in a compliance workflow where we can utilize basically AI, not as a buzzword.
How do you see the future in that sense?
What you can do today is, as a financial institution, you can acquire one of these models, put that into your firewall. You do not need to train the model anymore. It's already pre-trained. And that's where you have a quick win adopting a generative AI. For very large tier 1 banks, it can get up to millions, dozens of millions of savings in terms of the time you spend on these alerts. And that's where the new tools, mixed of different type of AI, will help you to reduce your cost.
Welcome to the Conductors, the AI Against Financial Crime podcast. In this podcast, we will discuss how AI and technology can help financial institutions fight against financial crime. Today, we will focus on the technology and also how banks can utilize it to comply with the newest EU regulations. And today, we have two great guests with us. András Simonyi, my co-leader at Consortix, who also leads our innovation, and Chris Ghenne, the lead for compliance solutions at SAS, who takes his global role so seriously that he sleeps more on planes than he does at his own home.
That's a good summary.
Both work in this field for more than 15 years, so I'm quite excited to hear what they will share about these topics. So guys, thank you very much for being here. Before we dig deep into any topics, let's start with some rapid questions. So first one goes to you, Chris. How did you get into this field of fighting financial crime?
It's a pure hazard, mistake maybe, or good luck. I was just young grad. I was actually an intern in one of the large banks in Europe, and I hated my job. I hated my job to the level that it was like a 9-to-5 job. And I said, I just want to get out of this. And I met a brilliant person called Robert, who found me a fintech in the Netherlands doing one of the first AML solutions back to 2004. So it's a bit more than 20 years now. And that was one of the fintech where I said, I don't mind sleeping in the plane. I don't mind traveling all around the planet, but don't put me in a bank as a 9-to-5 job.
Wow. I guess it did pay off, right?
Kind of. As you can see, yeah. I think I was making some statistic last year. I spent 135 days flying. So I was counting every day I was flying. So 135 days and 220 days on the road last year.
Wow, that's cool. It can be tiring as well, I guess.
Sometimes jet lag is difficult, but a good cup of coffee or a nice Red Bull, or when it's reverse, melatonin helps a lot, trust me.
Maybe you can also see this cosmic radiation already having effect on you, right? Because you're closer to the space.
Yeah.
What about you, András? How did you get into this field?
Well, I started my career as a developer in IT security, and I really loved the challenge of answering threats and vulnerabilities. So when I got the chance to, I would say, move one step further and being able to identify threats in financial systems, I took it. So I started as a developer, and then I gradually moved on. So this is how I got here.
Okay, cool. And what is your favorite or most impactful experience working in this field?
Obviously, the travel always gives a special twist on your work. So even if I haven't flown that much as Chris did, Before COVID, we traveled a lot, so I have a lot of nice experience around traveling. And then the exotic places always stand out, like Egypt or Australia. So my best memories are connected to these exotic travels.
I guess you have some experience.
Yeah, I have a very funny experience. And I think my first very nice experience, I had so many anecdotes. I could speak hours, but I think my first very nice anecdote was the first implementation I did for myself as a consultant. And we were receiving the first results of the first software, AML software we were implementing in sub-Saharan Africa. And when we start receiving the first alerts from the system, I cannot, of course, mention the bank or the country, but the first alert was someone very famous. And the whole team start laughing, like to the level they were crashing on the ground. And you know how in sub-Saharan Africa people can be so nice and expressive. And at some point, the head of compliance told me, Chris, you delete this. We cannot see this.
We have this anecdote as well in the company that we saw the first alert for a bank and the compliance officer was saying, oh my God, these are our favorite customers.
Yep, it happens.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing this. Today we want to dig a bit deeper on AI technology and how we can help with this for banks to comply with the latest regulations, especially in the EU. Of course, it's 2026, so it's pretty difficult to have any conversation without mentioning AI. It's still the hot topic. What is your experience? Which part of compliance or AML where the banks benefit the most from utilizing AI? What are the quick wins?
First, we need to define what is AI, because today AI is a buzzword. I think at SAS, we are doing AI for the last even almost 50 years. They will call it analytics. Analytics is AI in a certain sense. So I believe since I've joined SAS 12 years ago, I have seen so many usage of AI to different level. And that's where I like we define AI. So I would say first you have the legacy AI. As neural networks, as k-means for segmentation. You have decision trees. A dashboard can be AI as long as dynamic. So that's the legacy AI. The legacy AI is today a commodity. I think, András, you can comment on that. We don't see any of our clients shared or non-shared when we work together. They all have this today.
Yeah, it's just, some way funny that you refer to legacy to something that I just remember happened like yesterday, but time flies, yeah. So I fully agree.
So that's the first level. The second level is more what today we hear everywhere. So everywhere I go, and I remember an anecdote being in Saudi Arabia, and I've seen this head of compliance telling me, I want to see AI. And okay, but what do you want? Just show me AI. What he meant was a ChatGPT. So a large language model. He meant show me something that is magic, not something that is just statistics. Show me something magic, something I want a summary, I want this, I ask a question, show me that your system replies instantly. I think that's the second level. And now the buzzword that we hear everywhere is kind of a third level. It's everything in regard with agentic AI, which actually for me is a mix of the two first ones. It's just a way to orchestrate different AI tools together to achieve something. And what we want to achieve in compliance is getting more true positive, getting more detection. So optimizing your alerts, optimizing the way you analyze your alerts, you understand your alerts, or you investigate your alerts and you end to a conclusion.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that someone said that, just show me AI. And we see that as well, that these compliance managers, but of course other business areas, they have this pressure from their peers, from LinkedIn or from the management that they need to be one step ahead or at least follow with utilizing AI. And probably this is not the best approach getting started with AI. So what would you suggest to a compliance or AML director? What should they think through before starting an AI project?
This morning, I was in a plane. My plane was delayed, and I was scrolling on LinkedIn, and I've seen the exact answer to your question. The answer is you need to start with your data. And there was this emoticon of the brown emoticon with a smile on it, and it was saying, it doesn't matter how good or bad you have your processes. It doesn't matter the AI you use, legacy, agentic, generative, it's your data. And if your data are this brown emoticon, it doesn't matter what you're going to use, you are going to end up with the wrong project. So everything starts with the data.
To add to that, my first idea was around the synthetic data, which is also something that is generated by large language models. And I think it has a quite straightforward use case because the risk is very low. So what you want to achieve with that, you would like to validate your detection logic. And you can do that very effectively compared to what we did like 10 years ago, trying to compile data in Excel sheets, put the logic there. So now it's achievable very quickly.
We are doing it in the company as well. We are creating synthetic data with AI, and we see that it is working.
Exactly. And I think this is our task to identify all the use cases that is possible in a compliance workflow where we can utilize basically AI, not as a buzzword.
Both of you are speaking about data from different aspects, but what if someone is listening and he or she realizes that, we also have crappy data, as you mentioned, Chris. What would you suggest to them? Should they work on their data for a year before doing any AI project, or is there an easy start even with low quality data that they can start from tomorrow?
Obviously, they need to utilize AI to cleanse their data and to fix it on a level that it can be utilized in real AI use cases.
And what I see, unfortunately, answering your question, banks or large financial institutions are having and still continuing to have data remediation program. So when these programs are ongoing for a few years already, we don't care about the size of the banks. It could be a very small credit union to the largest top 10 banks in the world. They all have data remediation programs. So they can start to use some of the clusters where the data have been fixed. And that's what I see sometimes. When the data gets more or less in a quality, on a sufficient quality level, they can start using models. The example would be to score alerts. If you have enough data in your alerts and you have a data lake for your clients with sufficient information, you can start using an hibernation model, for example, where you would be able to create a machine learning model that would not auto-close your alert, but would suggest a certain score or a certain level of certainty into the level of the quality of that alert. And I think the majority of our clients today, again, Consortix and SAS together, they do this scoring for alerts. It's an out-of-the-box capability. And I think that leads to a second feature, which is the segmentation of your client. If you have enough data to build your models to score your alerts, you also have enough data to derive clusters or peer groups of your clients. And that could look at a statistical method, but it's AI. In the definition of AI, it's an AI tool where you define dynamically your peer groups of clients or segments. And that helps to really start with AI.
Okay. So would you say that step 0 is data remediation, and then in general you would suggest starting with alert scoring and then segmentation as the first 2 steps?
Or segmentation and then scoring. It depends a little bit of the maturity where you are, the history of data also you get. When it's a new digital bank and you do not have years of data, it's going to be probably easier to start with segmentation. Vice versa, when you have years of history of alerts, it's easier to start with scoring of your alerts. So it's a bit of a case by case, but these 2 methods are probably a good starting point. And I would say that out of the hundreds of clients I'm meeting in the world, 20-30% are already in production today now with these models.
So these are good starting points and good use cases. Do you see any use cases that the banks or financial institutions are trying to solve with AI, but they are not a good idea because of some burden? So some use cases that you would never suggest a bank to start with.
So the first one is going to be, do not start by using a model that looks at the reporting to the regulator variable. Because if you start looking only at the target of creating a report, you're going to start with the bias in your model because you are going to circle only on the data that are leading to a report. And if you are missing anything, or AI is also there to support what you don't know today. So if you include in your analysis the only target that you want to achieve, that's going to be pretty bad in terms of result because you're going to probably dismiss cases. And an AI model is not a scenario with a few lines of code. An AI model could be thousands and thousands of lines of codes and results. So you don't have that capacity to deep dive in each line to identify a potential issue. So that's where you need to be careful, not creating bias when you start using AI.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. On the opposite, if you also do not have enough data, that's something I start to see more. It's the ability to use consortium models. So the institutions having a very large amount of data, building models, they can build patterns or they can build some models that are trained on their data. And without sharing the results, you can share the metadata, which is part of the model. And that metadata can be shared with other banks. That could be speeding up the ability to adopt a model. And I would say that's for the legacy AI I mentioned a bit before, but also that's what we see now with the generative AI. When you see people adopting a co-pilot, ChatGPT or any large language models, these models are built with millions and millions of data from different users. What you can do today is, as a financial institution, you can acquire one of these models, put that into your firewall. You do not need to train the model anymore. It's already pre-trained. And that's where you have a quick win adopting a generative AI.
We've seen these consortium models more in fraud in the past. Do you see it happening already in AML too?
It's starting in AML at the moment. At SAS, we are building these models while we speak. The plan is to release this model in 2026. Models around the most common modus operandi for money launderers. So things around cash, things around wire transfers, international wires. These contains patterns that are the same, and it doesn't matter where you are on the planet. Cash structuring will remain cash structuring if you're in the UK, in Hungary, or in Japan. It's probably the amount or the frequency of transactions that will make the difference in between the different countries or different banks. But the modus operandi in itself will be the same. So that's where, when you have the variables pre-trained, you can really quickly get this working without having to test this on millions of other data.
This is going to help a lot on the mid-tier because those institutions just won't have enough data to train their own models. So I think this is going to be a big help in their way forward.
Okay, that's good for them to hear.
And I think, Tamás, it was like in the past when we were creating scenarios and creating packages of scenarios, it's going to be the exact same happening with the models around AI.
Yeah, and it also takes us to the topic of how to create new things. So we have all seen in our personal life as well that creating something, some content, it became so much quicker and easier with AI. And it's also happening in the IT world that some IT teams, they see that the effort required to create some parts of working software, it's getting easier and quicker. So how do you see the future in that sense? Will bank compliance teams create their own software in-house?
I pretty hope so, or at least the configuration, because We have seen the low-code, no-code frameworks, and then it's just the next step. So why would you need to learn how to use these, how to put manual actions there to create your logic? Why not use human prompting? And this is actually something that we already see happening in SaaS solutions and our daily work at Consortix, developing detection logic with human prompting.
Will they still buy software?
That's a question.
We hope so.
We can only say, yeah, we hope so.
No, but I think to your point, low code, no code is definitely something that we see now for the last 5 years, approximately. But still, low code, no code is not that easy because you still have to understand the data model behind the scene. You need to understand how to build the logic. Even if you do not code it, you need to understand what you want to be coded. And that requires some analytical skills around it. What I've seen recently is scenario suggestions. So that's part of the generative AI. It's the co-pilot. Basically, you ask the co-pilot, am I missing something? Do you see that I could do something differently, better? And then co-pilot will start suggesting, I think you should do this. And then what you also could see is based on the legislations. You may not know every single legislation, even if it's your field, but things are changing so quickly. And especially if we switch a little bit to the sanctions world, but AML and sanctions are so close today that on sanctions, it's basically on a day-to-day basis. Yesterday, the Hormuz was opening. Today is again closed. So you have vessels, you have things you need to know, and you cannot know as an individual. That's where AI can help you to tune your scenarios, to activate on-off based on the news, based on everything which is happening over the last 24 hours. You can ask an AI tool to really update your scenarios in real time. That's where there is also a big future coming.
Okay, so you're saying that the teams will be able to adapt much quicker with AI. These were some very interesting thoughts about detection. How do you see the role of AI in the investigation workflow process, how it can help?
These large language models are, as we all know, very good at generating text. So my personal view is that if you provide enough data, data around your customers, your transactions, your alerts, then you will be in the situation as an analyst to much quicker generate the case narratives and the SAR reports in your solution, which will give you benefit.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess efficiency of investigation is definitely something. I'm not scared about the number of alerts your system generates because you never know. You can have a spike in transactions, a spike of activity. Again, with the geopolitical context at the moment, any trader is probably having much more transaction than ever just based on the news. It's time to buy, it's time to sell. So again, if you need to adjust your scenarios, you need to have these AI tools to face this huge amount of transactions that are completely changing. And getting more alerts is not an issue. Getting the time to investigate this alert is the issue. And getting the time also to investigate faster. So some of our clients are also using some AI, again, generative AI tools around synthetic data or collecting data and making some entity resolution to bring additional data to your alerts that you understand faster the global picture. And we discussed this during lunch today. If, let's say you have a client generating an alert, but you have to investigate to get into the details to understand this person owns a company. That company has other UBOs. You need to understand the full picture of who is who. That can take not hours, but that can take easily a few minutes just to collect the data, to understand it. If when you open your alert, a generative AI tool has collected all this information, creating a picture or creating a table for you to understand faster, and even putting some prompt stating, we believe you should investigate this into the details more for this person or for that person. There are probably more data available on the internet or on other sources of information. That will help and reduce the time of investigating. There was a study made a few years ago. They were saying that if you consider an alert takes 5 minutes to be investigated, if you have the whole information, you have a maker-checker in between LOD1 and LOD2, and LOD2 will validate this. So you easily can go to 12 minutes to 14 minutes per alert. If you receive millions of alerts per year, if you only reduce by 30% or 40% your alerts for very large tier 1 banks, it can get up to millions, of dozens of millions of savings in terms of the time you spend on these alerts. And that's where the new tools, mixed of different type of AI, will help you to reduce your costs.
It sounds great if I'm looking at it from a shareholder or bank manager perspective. But if I'm an investigator, I can get a bit worried about what these cost savings will mean. So is AI taking away investigators' jobs?
Definitely not. They have just so much to do. And then just think about the fact that the value that they can put on the table, because they are just not sorting trash with just false positive alerts. It's going to be a much better job, a much better day he spends at the system that he's using, because the investigation is just more thorough. He's working on the meaningful cases.
Okay. So I will not only not lose my job, but I will have a more interesting job.
Exactly. Imagine you spend your time closing 95% of your alerts false positives, or not false positive, I prefer to call it non-productive. So that means only 5% of your alerts become something interesting to work. And you have to speed up because you are legally obliged to close or to review every single alert. So if you reduce the number of alerts you generate, but you increase the number of real cases you find, your job becomes more interesting. There was also some analysis done a few years ago about the turnover in compliance. The turnover of employees was the highest in banks because people get bored, because they only close alerts without having to really dedicate their time to something, it's not fun, but something more interesting to manage. So definitely it's not reducing the number of employees. And on the contrary, it is increasing the number of employees. One of the banks I work in the US, they have deployed a lot of AI to the level that now they raised the conversion rate of their alerts into reporting or suspicious investigation from 10% to 35%. That has increased the FTEs by 25% because they were needing even more time to investigate these cases and to prepare all the documentation to send to FinCEN, the regulatory body.
Okay. Yeah, it's as you say, keeping these employees, it's a big challenge, and also recruiting in this area, it can be a very difficult challenge for the banks. We've seen also here in Hungary, but also internationally, that some compliance teams are growing a lot, but are trying to grow a lot, but they cannot find the right people. Let's switch back to the view of the director or the manager. We have heard these exciting ideas about how to start with AI, how not to start, what kind of benefits it can bring to you. What is the right approach for evaluating these ideas? So what kind of, how should an AML or compliance director start with an AI strategy in AML?
I think first you look at the budget allocated today to your department to analyze your alerts, the number of employees you have, the cost associated to this. And I'll take just a very basic example, even outside of compliance. When you ask today to get a license for Copilot to support your work, it doesn't matter if you work in a bank, in a company. If you ask to get a license of Copilot to support you, is to go faster. So look at the cost of Copilot, look at the cost of not having it in terms of time that you need. the calculation is very quickly done. So when it gets to AML, when it gets to even fraud or sanctions, it's the same. Look how long your investigators are taking to detect the suspicious activities, to work on it. And you start by building the case. I will either receive less alerts, so less time on false positive or non-productive alerts. I will have my investigator much more efficient, and I will also have less turnover. It's not just the system in itself, but when you have to train someone for a few months, the person gets adjusted to the job. But when you see that average, it's maximum 2 years in the position, you also lose time in recruitment, in time of training the person. And the investment you do in human capital can be quickly also lost. And that's something the banks are not considering at the moment. They only look, okay, my software, my FTEs, but they don't look at the human capital around this. So again, as a manager, head of compliance, start by thinking, where do I have my biggest cost? And where AI will bring it down and getting things better.
And then also, let's not forget the mindset change. So if you, in your personal life, utilize this technology for buying a cinema ticket or drafting your itinerary for your summer holiday, then you start thinking also in your job, in your work activities, how could it be more efficient? And then you will see these use cases, and then you want to go for that.
Yeah, it's exciting for sure, and I understand that it requires a shift in thinking, AI first thinking, also what we try to advocate at Consortix internally too. However, comparing to your examples, of course, it's much more difficult to start an AI project in a banking environment with the data privacy issues, with the ethical issues, and many others. So how do you help your customers with navigating those kind of challenges?
I would definitely go for low-risk POCs or smaller exercises. So just think about what I already mentioned, validating your scenarios with artificial data, or just documenting. Documentation is also a very important thing, also in case of an audit. Can you show me a document with all the detection logic elements inside your system? Is it up to date? How do you do the change management of that? And then if you generate such documents, then you can easily compare if you are not trusting the technology, and with relatively low risk, you have a use case which will give you value.
It sounds very practical.
On an innovation side, you can also take a similar approach. Try to find things that are undetected. Use unsupervised learning. So you are not touching to the existing framework or scenarios, workflows. You just try to show them, look, you forgot this. You could not detect it with the human brain, but with AI, we can show you that you forgot this or that. And that will improve your efficiency as well. It works more on the fraud side, because on the fraud side, when you do this, you have a direct return on investment, because investment shows you, hey, I detect more fraud. On AML sanctions, you cannot really calculate this. It's more reputation effect, or it's more also avoiding more fines, because you get more compliant. But the reputation effect is pretty high when you see some of the money laundering scandals in the Nordics, where the share of the bank is losing more than 25% within 24 hours after a money laundering scandal in the news. The effect is much higher than investing in an AI tool or in more advanced tools to support money laundering detection.
So we started from the motivation to start AI because it's cool, and we saw that there are some examples for that. But at the end, we arrived, for me, the main conclusion based on your inputs is that you need to start from what business problem you would like to solve. Probably you should start with something small and defendable, and then you can build up a strategy for the long term. Is it the approach that you would take?
That's correct.
I would say also look at what investment you already have made. At SAS, we have a concept of bring your own AI as well, because of the not open source, but open box model that we bring. If you already have a Copilot, if you already have been building in Python some scripts to support different departments, it's bring your own. Do not waste what you have done already. Instead of just replacing, bring it, convert it on the latest technology, bring more guidance, more governance on the top of what you have done. You can build anything you want in Python, in R, especially when it gets to AI models, but you don't know how to govern it. You detecting bias, detecting how efficient is the model, you need a framework to manage this. And when you have one model, it's easy. But when you run 25 models in parallel, it's very difficult to monitor every single model. And that's where the strategy could be also bring what you have done and ensure that you validating it and then you reuse it.
Yeah, and this approach is very important because usually these are large systems. So to change these or to go for another vendor takes a lot of time, a big decision. But if you can go reusable components and with baby steps migrate some part of the functionality, then the risk of such a decision is not that huge.
Yeah, but is it, because both of you do a lot of projects globally and you see customers struggling with different issues, but and we are speaking about the coolest stuff, but we see that some of our, or many of our customers are struggling with basic things with their system that is very far from being AI ready. So how is it possible to start with small steps with legacy systems? Is it possible, or at one point you should just take a big breath and start investing into technology?
Okay. It really depends on what platform are you on. So I think this is a huge benefit of SaaS, that you can apply this mentality, bring your own AI, migrate your existing things, and then also add your own extensions. Not everybody can do that because some frameworks are just black boxes and you cannot build. So it really depends on customers and their architecture.
And remember, Tamás, I showed you that slide a few years ago. Maybe we can show the slide for the people listening, or it's the maturity level where you are at the moment. It depends on the people you have. If you do not have data scientists, if you do not have people with the knowledge, you need first to hire the knowledge. You need to bring the knowledge. It's people, process. Where are you today with this different process? Do you already have set up some technology? Are you, in the example of AML and your tuning of scenarios, do you have segmentation? Yes, no. Do you have scenario tuning? Yes, no. Do you do above the line, below the line regression testing? Again, yes, no. Based on that, where are you? Because if you want to start to drive a Formula One, but you even don't have your driving license, you're going to fail. So, and again, that's where we advise to think, where are you today? Be honest, be humble. There is no problem of being on level 1 and just having your driving license.
Maybe the regulators have a different opinion on that.
But that's how we can help them to to get to a different level. And regulators are also lost. When we speak with regulators sometimes have no clue of what is really AI. So one of the things we have done, and that's back to 2016 when the first models, even not called AI yet, but the models, we will call it models, I was always suggesting bring your regulator with you. So do not wait to have 3 months in the project, 20 people, or even an army of juniors in the summer as interns building stuff. Bring your regulator from day one with you in order they understand what you do and they can validate or they can block you saying, no, here, don't go that route. Give you an example. With the EU AI Act, you need to classify your different algorithms you are using. If it's a high risk, you cannot use the high risk for detection. So the different ways of validating, are you low risk, medium risk, or high risk. If it's a high risk, you cannot. However, it's written in small letters, paragraph 59 of the EU Act, you can use it for anti-fraud and anti-money laundering. So in that case, you can go beyond what is basic to try to detect more things. In 2019, FinCEN wrote a letter to all the banks in the US encouraging the usage of new technology. Not saying what you should do or not do, but telling, please start using the technology, show us the results, and we will go with you to help you to validate what you have done or to block you if it's too dangerous.
Yeah, I see you have done your homework on the AI Act.
Definitely.
András, what do you see as, in this complicated space, the real added value of consultants in terms of choosing the right systems and system implementations?
It starts from the discussion that we just had. So these people have a lot of questions, how to apply, what to start with. And here I feel our responsibility, so that we keep track of technology and we keep track of regulation, so that we can advise on these questions, how to start with, what to implement, what are the steps, where are they in this on this scale, how far are they in this AI journey, so that we can try to find the best fitting application for them.
I see that too. It's really about understanding the customer, and you cannot have like a one-size-fits-all approach to any of the customers. You have to start with where they are.
Definitely, customization is more important than ever.
And back to your point earlier about the consortium model, bring a consortium model, but look at the maturity of your client, maturity of the data, to see if you can use it, or if you need to have a remediation program before using it.
That's a good thought too. As you have been mentioning regulations, let's speak a bit about the AML-related regulations. We all know that it's coming with the AMLA, the AMLR, the Single Rule Book, and the 6th EU AML Directive. From a system and technology perspective, how do you see the role of AML systems changing because of these new regulations?
Some of the new rules, and we're going to take one of the example. One of the new rule will be that you need to monitor closely sportsmen, sportswomen, because they can bring a lot of money, and they could have some bribes. They could be part of a scheme of money laundering. They could. So it relates again back to your data. If you use one of the platform, in my example, SAS, as an open box solution, it's a question of a few minutes to set up the new rule when we have the exact clarification on the rules, when we know what type of person, what type of behavior we look at, what type of threshold. But if you do not have that data already in your KYC or data lake, you will be struggling to deploy the new regulation. So the rule itself is not more complex than the existing rules. It's going to be the mapping of the data to make sure the rules works and provide you the right results in time. Because at some point they would be enforced, and you don't have 6 months or 1 year to wait. You will just have to comply with the new regulation.
This is true for the whole chain. So you start with the data. You have to have unified data, because AMLA is going to be applied to banking groups. So these entities will have subsidiaries in different countries with different legislations earlier to AMLA. So different data sets, different detection logic, and different reports. So you will need, or these entities will need to unify all of this whole chain, which is going to be a big exercise.
Yeah, so you mentioned banking groups. And for sure it will be a big difference especially for these 40 selected financial institution group or banking groups within the EU, who actually currently most of them cannot know for sure if they will be in this group or not. So what we see is that approximately 50 or 60 groups are preparing for the AMLA because they are potential candidates. How do you see this challenge of localization and group approach from an AML system perspective for these banking groups who want to comply with the new regulations?
Definitely, it's going to be a roadmap. So as I mentioned, starting with the data. So that's the hardest part to change, because a lot of source systems, a lot of different data structures. And then once this is done, then they go on to the detection logic, the risk logic. Obviously, they will need to unify whatever is possible, but there will always be local needs. And the challenge that they are facing is that they need to be able to, towards the regulators, defend why they cannot live without these localization needs.
And we see a very big difference in how these banking groups behave in terms of allowing localizations. Some of them work as a very autocratic organization, and there the local teams, they almost have no freedom. Some of them give more freedom to the local teams. Do I assume correctly that the latter will have more challenges in preparing for the group-like approach with the AMLA?
Well, it depends on their mindset, because if you get more freedom, then I have the feeling that you are more open to do the changes quicker. So we will see if this effect comes through or not.
But from the third EU directive, large groups in Europe were already obliged to have a similar approach. It doesn't matter which country you are in. So large group should have the same family of scenario in each country, in each subsidiary. That was already something necessary. What we will see with AMLA becoming the one single FIU for the 27 plus 3, so 30 entities, the non-EU entities, but following the AMLA guidance, they will come on with the one common standard reporting metrics. So you will have to do your reports, supposed to maybe to subject to change, but the STR subject matter transaction report and the TTR transaction reports, they will come with first a one unified template. I think that's for the large group that I already have in place the common set of scenarios or family of scenarios and way of reporting. That should be not that difficult to do. It's going to be more difficult for the regulated entities that don't have a system, that are just reporting manually, because it's not only the banks and the insurances, it's also all the credit unions, all the likes of the remittance companies, crypto company, the VASPs. They will have to report in a kind of a banking standard. So I believe in terms of financial institution, the majority of the financial institutions, they have already a system in place. More advanced, more automated, homegrown, or from a solution vendor, but they have something. They will have to adjust. That's going to be already taking time. But the challenge will come for the non-regulated entities in the past that are becoming regulated entities.
Okay, I think that was a great wrap-up. What I learned from you guys today was that we start from the data. I think in most of your answers we heard about data quality and the work you have to do with your data. We learned about how important it is to have an open system that you can configure and you invest the work into configuration, and to have a clear strategy of what business problem you would like to solve, and build on top of all of that for any regulatory requirement, including the AMLA and the AMLR. Before we finish, I would like to ask for your quick takes on a few trends that will or will not happen in the next 3 years. So I will make a statement and I will ask you to give me either a 1 if you fully disagree that this will happen, or a 5 if you fully agree, and of course you can give me numbers in between. So the first one is that AI will make its own decisions in AML in 3 years.
1
as well.
That was pretty clear. You can add comments as well if
but
you
do
need.
you know why? It's easy. because you will never make this non-human. AI will help. You would have told us AI will grow and will become something 99% of the job done by AI. I would say maybe yes. But 100% decision made by AI in AML, it's going to be no. It's against the EU AI Act. It's against all other legislation in the world managing AI. And I'll take an analogy. Go to your doctor for eye surgery. You will trust the laser making your surgery, but you still want the doctor next to the tool. So I think it's the same with AI. In the banking compliance world, you will still have the analyst at the end, the human person making the final decisions.
We have partly touched upon this, but my next question is that, or statement is that AI will reduce the cost of compliance.
You go first, Chris.
50-50, so it's going to be 3.
Okay, so you believe it, that to some extent it will reduce the cost?
Some extent.
Okay, more banks than today will internally develop their AML systems with AI.
I would go for a 2, not just to position ourselves, but I have the feeling that development skills are going to be internalized. So a lot of development will be done in-house using AI, using agentic approach. But in the niche areas, and in my view, compliance is such a thing, you will need experts regardless of if it's a regulated environment or not.
I would even say 1. I've seen banks trying to develop their own AML system. It's either failing and then they buy something anyways, or the costs is so high that actually it doesn't make sense unless you are one of the top 10 largest banks in the world where your IT department is so big that you can afford to make it.
Next one. Composite solutions will be the trend rather than end-to-end software suites.
It depends on clients, so I would say 3.
Yeah, agree, 3. Just if you're a small bank or a big bank, the answer may be different.
True. And for the final one, let's see how optimistic we are. So with the help of new technology and AI, combined with the EU regulations and the compliance needs with that, money laundering will be more difficult, significantly more difficult in the EU than it is today.
I would go for a 4.
Even a 5, totally agree. It's already the case. You know, today we speak about backdoors. Money laundering is increasing. It's not decreasing or on the plan for the last 20 years, but it's getting more and more complex for money launderers within the EU or in North America to launder the money. And they use fiscal tax haven countries or weakest legislation countries.
Okay, so let's hope that the future will bring this. Happier life for the investigators and more miserable life for the money launderers. So with that, András, Chris, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I hope you did as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Conductors, the AI Against Financial Crime podcast. If you are interested in similar episodes to learn more about how you can utilize AI and technology to fight financial crime, please subscribe.